You underestimated me, Officer Reynolds, but the truth always finds a way. What can make a courtroom fall into absolute silence? A white ICE officer accuses a Latina woman of resisting arrest and assaulting him, claiming she's an undocumented immigrant. Her story is compelling, impeccable, until she takes the stand and turns the entire case on its head. Who is this woman, and why does her testimony stun the officer, the jury, and even the judge? This is the story of how a lie collapsed, and how a simple fight for survival morphed into a battle for truth and justice. Let's get into the story. Fluorescent lights buzzed over the courtroom, casting a cold glow. The wooden benches creaked as people settled in. Some were community members, others journalists hungry for a scoop. The tension in the air was stifling, thick with curiosity and silent judgment. At the defense table sat Isabel La Cruz, her caramel-colored skin barely glowing in the sterile light. Her long, dark hair was braided in a low ponytail, and she wore a simple white blouse with dark pants, carefully chosen to avoid appearing threatening, but her posture told a different story. Sitting upright, shoulders back, gaze steady, she radiated determination. On the other side, Officer Mark Reynolds stood at the prosecution table, immaculate in his lice uniform, with an expression that suggested victory was already his. Years of unchecked authority had taught him one thing. People like Isabella didn't stand a chance. The bailiff called for order, and Judge Robert Hansen entered, a middle-aged white man with strong features and a look weary from cases he'd rather forget. "The state versus Isabella Cruz," the bailiff announced. Isabella was unfazed. The prosecutor stood up and said, "Your Honor, we are here today because this woman resisted lawful arrest and assaulted a federal officer. She refused to show her identification and posed a flight risk. Officer Reynolds acted within his authority." Isabella's attorney, Sophia Morales, shifted nervously in her seat. Fresh out of law school, this was her first high-profile case. She looked to Isabella for some comfort, but her eyes remained fixed on the judge. Impenetrable. Reynolds took the stand with a haughty smile, brimming with confidence. "I approached the defendant in front of a grocery store. I saw her acting suspiciously. When I asked for her identification, she refused and became aggressive. She grabbed my arm and tried to run away." Murmurs and sighs could be heard in the courtroom. Isabella remained motionless with a serene expression. The judge raised an eyebrow, but didn't comment. At that moment, it seemed the scales of justice had already tipped. But Isabella knew better. The prosecutor's voice boomed. "Officer Reynolds, would you say the defendant posed a threat to public safety?" Without hesitation, Reynolds answered, "Absolutely." He was hostile and uncooperative. I feared for my safety. His words hung in the air, firm and condemning. Yet Isabella's face remained imperturbable, a mask of control. No anger, no fear, only serene determination. "Thank you, Officer Reynolds," the prosecutor concluded, allowing Reynolds to step down from the bench with a cocky smile. Judge Hansen addressed Isabella. "Miss Cruz, it is your turn to testify." Isabella slowly stood up, smoothing her blouse. The prosecutor walked toward the bench with measured, careful steps, feeling the weight of hundreds of gazes. Once seated, Isabella adjusted the microphone with calm, confident movements. The prosecutor wasted no time. "Miss Cruz, you heard Officer Reynolds' testimony. He denies it." She leaned forward slightly, speaking in a calm but penetrating tone. "I deny every word of it." A murmur ran through the courtroom. The prosecutor sneered. "So you're saying an officer with a lice badge is lying?" Isabella's dark eyes met the prosecutor's. "All I'm saying is that your version of the truth is convenient." More sighs were heard. The judge banged his gavel. "Order in the courtroom." Sophia leaned forward and whispered with concern, "Isabella, we need something else." But Isabella responded enigmatically. The truth always finds a way. Just wait. Sophia's tension increased, but there was something in Isabella's tone, something powerful and firm. A storm was brewing, and no one in that room was prepared. The room filled with whispers again, as Isabella's brave words floated through the air. Even Judge Hanson looked surprised for a moment before regaining his composure. The prosecutor approached the bench again and asked, "Miss Cruz, if Officer Reynolds is lying, what really happened that day?" Isabella's fingers gently gripped the edge of the bench until her knuckles turned white. Although her face remained serene, she took a deep, controlled breath before answering. She was leaving the grocery store. She began in a firm voice. "I bought a few things: milk, bread, coffee. I was texting my sister when Officer Reynolds approached me. The prosecutor leaned in, trying to seize the opportunity. "And what did you do when he asked for your ID?" "I asked why he needed it," Isabella answered. "I wasn't loitering, I wasn't bothering anyone. I was just outside checking my phone." The prosecutor's mouth twisted into a smile. "And when did you decide you were an undocumented immigrant?" Isabella clenched her jaw. "He didn't suspect it. He decided it based on how I looked." A wave of tension rippled through the courtroom. He grabbed my arm before I could even take out my wallet. He continued in a calm but firm voice. I told him he was making a mistake, and he didn't care. At the prosecution table, Officer Reynolds looked uneasy. For the first time, a crack appeared in his arrogant facade. The prosecutor, visibly shaken, tried to regain control of the narrative. "Miss Cruz, did you resist when he tried to stop you? I told him to let me go. I didn't push him. I didn't run. But he twisted my arm and slammed me against the patrol car." Gasps and sighs rang out in the courtroom. The judge banged his gavel, order. But the murmurs didn't stop. Reynolds' attorney looked at him nervously, while the officer tried to maintain his composure. And then Isabella delivered the final blow. "He told me," she declared in a firm voice, "people like you don't belong in this place." The courtroom erupted in whispers. The judge banged harder. Order. Sophia, her eyes wide, leaned toward Isabella and whispered, "Do you have proof of that?" "Right." Isabella looked at her calmly. "Not yet, but I'll have them." Sophia's aunt's heart pounded. What was Isabella hiding? One thing was certain. Reynolds's carefully constructed lies were beginning to music unravel. As the recess was announced and footsteps echoed through the courtroom halls, reporters swarmed outside, capturing every moment and every whisper about Isabella's shocking testimony. In a small, dim conference room, Sophia Morales paced back and forth, clutching her notebook. Across from her, Isabella sat, so calm she seemed almost inhuman in her silence. "Hey, you have to tell me what's going on," Sophia insisted, her voice trembling with anxiety. "That line Reynolds said, 'People like you don't belong here,' is powerful, but we need more. If we don't find solid evidence, the judge, she's not going to dismiss the charges." Isabella sighed and leaned back in her chair. "I know." "Then help me," Sophia exclaimed, her voice cracking with frustration. "Isabella, are you hiding something? I can see it." Isabella's eyes softened, and a flicker of something appeared in them, pain or strength. Finally, she spoke softly. "I've been through worse than this." Sophia stopped dead in her tracks. "What do you mean?" Isabella reached into her bag and pulled out a worn leather folder. She slid it across the table to Sophia. "Open it." With trembling hands, Sophia opened it. Inside, she found official documents, service records with decorations, medals, and photographs. The air left her lungs. "You're a Navy SEAL, Lieutenant Commander," Isabella confirmed. 15 years. "I retired last year." Sophia's mind was spinning. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? I should have finished this case today." Isabella shook her head. If she had revealed it from the beginning, Reynolds would have found a way to cover himself up. I needed him to feel safe, so he would continue lying. Sophia slumped in her chair, feeling the weight of that revelation. You risked everything. I've risked my life for this country more times than I can count, Isabella said quietly but firmly. But people like Reynolds don't see that. They only see the color of my skin, my last name, and they assume the worst. Sophia's eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. We're going to win this. We have to. A faint smile appeared on Isabella's lips. Tomorrow we'll finish this. Music. The next morning, the courtroom wouldn't just hear the truth. They'd see it with their own eyes. And when the truth hit, it would hit hard. The morning sun cast long shadows across the courthouse. Inside, the tension was palpable. Courtroom was even more crowded than the day before. The news had spread. Journalists filled the benches with notebooks and cameras in hand. This was no longer just about Isabella Cruz's case. It was about exposing something much deeper. Isabella sat at the defense table, her face serene but full of determination. Beside her, Sophia trembled with nerves, now wielding the truth as her most powerful weapon. The gavel banged. We continue with the state's case against Isabella Cruz, Judge Hanson announced, looking at both sides. Prosecutor, your witness. The prosecutor stood,